Hi guys. Every once in a while a flight doesn't go exactly the way that you want it to. Maybe because you're too tired, maybe because you got distracted. Who knows? A lot of things. And one of the things I like to do, since I'm not a full-time pilot and do real estate for a living, but do fly quite a bit, a couple hundred hours a year, and fly some pretty complex airplanes. I teach in these airplanes. But every once in a while, things don't go the way you want it. So this is one of those eating a little bit of humble pie and showing you guys how I screwed up a fairly simple approach because I got behind a little bit and wasn't paying attention to what the weather was doing, especially with a very strong tailwind on a downwind approach to begin with. It was a GPS circle to land. We ended up shooting this approach with a ground speed of over 220 knots. Anyway, take a look, see if you learn anything, and enjoy the ride with all the winds and the bumps and fun stuff with this wonderful airplane.
I'm Eric Reese. I sell real estate for a living, but I fly and instruct in the Aerostar for fun. Join us on our travel and training adventures in the world's fastest light piston twin.
Five knots, rotate, positive rate of climb, gear up, 110 knots, flaps up. It's kind of a cool departure. We got the clearance to turn right, heading 170, continue climbing. And after a little while on the downwind, they make you do a 180 to the left back to heading a 350. Basically takes you right over the top of Las Vegas. Why they don't just let you go straight out on 35, I'm not sure, but maybe they think that I can't climb fast enough to be 6,000 feet by the time I'm on top of McCarran, or maybe it's they don't want me in Class B. Who knows? But anyway, we're off. Gorgeous day out of Henderson, Nevada, and we'll be heading north here shortly. I thought I'd say a little bit about the editing. This is actually my first attempt at using Adobe Premiere Pro. There's a lot to it, there's a lot of complexities, and I'm sure over time I will get better at doing it. Nowhere near as good as my two sons who are professionals doing this, but it's fun to learn. At this point, we're still at flight level 220. I had prepared my descent and set it up in the vertical speed calculator in the navigator, and set it up to arrive at Cogg's intersection, which is the initial approach fix, about 3 miles ahead of it at 9,000 feet. That was one of my first mistakes, because I should have set it up a lot sooner than that. And what I wasn't paying attention to was the fact that I had 100 knots of wind off my left wing, so pretty much a direct crosswind. And when we got lower, that swung around to the south and turned into a pretty strong tailwind. So on the initial part of the approach, my ground speed was still 220 knots, and I really wasn't paying attention to that. That created an issue a little bit later. Well, in the soup at 9,000 feet, it's starting to get pretty bumpy. I guess that's kind of an understatement. It was pulling pretty hard in the seatbelt, bouncing around, which increased the distractions. By this time, I would normally be slowed down. I'm at 9,000 feet, but I think the turbulence kind of got me distracted a little bit because, as you can see, just about ready to intercept the final approach course. And normally at this point, I'd have flaps in at 20. I would have been powered back a little bit because of the tailwinds, but since I didn't notice it, I didn't power back. And that's going to come into effect because what it did during the whole approach is cause me to be high at every single one of the step downs because I was, again, a little bit behind the airplane. So in order to compensate for that, instead of pulling the power back even further, I just pushed the nose over and descended at anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 feet a minute. It never did catch up. But I did know that the ceilings were about 4,500 feet, so I just said, all right, I'm not going to fly the vertical nav, I'll just go ahead and fly it as if it was a non-precision approach. That worked out fine. But it was a little frustrating. This is one of the worst approaches that procedurally that I have ever flown. At this point, I started picking up a little bit of impact ice. Didn't pick up all that much, maybe 1/4 of an inch. It was barely enough ice on the boots to even activate them. I did turn the alcohol windshield on just to make sure that there wasn't anything on there once I broke out of the clouds, which is coming up pretty soon. But still at 9,000 feet, started the descent and went behind. I think I crossed over the next fix about 500 feet high. And the interesting thing was that the Aspen didn't switch over into approach mode until I'd reached that second fix. And what that did is it wasn't displaying the vertical deviation indicator nor the horizontal deviation indicator on the attitude indicator as I had expected. There were a couple of other factors involved today that caused me to forget how to fly, so to speak. That was long flight, just under 4 hours, and I didn't have breakfast. I had a banana and a piece of toast, and that was about it. I didn't even eat anything on the airplane during the flight. So I went from early morning, and oh man, is it bumpy here. Went from early morning without having much to eat. And your body does need energy for your brain to work. Still too high, still too fast, still have about 5 inches of manifold pressure more than I need. But it worked out just fine. I eventually caught up with the glide slope and had a very nice, smooth landing. Some of the morals of this story are, number one, get enough rest. Number two, keep your body fueled so that your brain will work. One of the other things that I've noticed in teaching in Aerostars is that every single one of these is different. The equipment's different, the avionics is different, airplanes are the same. But because of that, I'm flying airplanes that have Garmin in it, they've got Aspens in it, they've got regular round gauges, they've got Avidynes, they've got just about everything you can think of. And that's probably a contributing factor, even though I'm very comfortable with the GTN 750 and also comfortable with the Aspen 1000 series. But all of those things tax your brain. But as you can see, this all ended very safely. I learned a lot, and hopefully you guys have learned a little bit. And please go ahead and ask questions and subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I'll keep producing more and more of this stuff. And hopefully get a little bit better at editing. Either that or keep getting my sons to do it because their stuff always looks a lot better than mine. So happy flying, fly safe, and enjoy what we're doing.